The Maldives Cave Legal Battle. Why Italy is still waiting for the evidence. 5 divers entered a deep underwater cave in the Maldives. None of them returned alive. Specialist recovery divers later entered the cave, located the bodies and recovered pieces of equipment that may contain the closest thing investigators will ever obtain to an eyewitness account. Dive computers may reveal their depths, times, and ascent profiles. Cameras may reveal what they saw. A GoPro may show when the dive stopped being controlled and became an emergency. But more than 2 months after the disaster, the most important questions remain unanswered. Not necessarily because investigators have stopped working, not because the evidence has disappeared, and not because the final report has already been written and deliberately hidden. The problem is more complicated. The deaths occurred in the Maldives. The victims were Italian. The vessel operated under Maldivian jurisdiction. Some of the victims' electronic devices were returned to Italy. Other equipment, including cameras and dive computers recovered from the cave, remained in the custody of investigators in Malay. That created 2 investigations, 2 legal systems, and 1 enormous procedural problem. Who gets to examine the evidence first? Who is permitted to copy it? Who controls the original devices? And how can Italy use evidence seized in another country without damaging its value in a future criminal case? This is no longer only a diving mystery. It is now an international legal investigation. On May 14, 2026, 5 Italian divers entered the Devana Kandu cave system near Alimathaya Island in Vaavu Atoll. The group included marine ecologist Monica Montefalcone, her daughter Giorgia Somacal, researchers Muriel Adanino and Federico Gualtieri, and diving instructor Gianluca Benedetti. Benedetti's body was recovered near the beginning of the operation. The other 4 were eventually located together inside the cave's 3rd chamber. A Maldivian military diver, Mohammed Mahoudi, also died during the initial recovery effort after suffering decompression sickness. The disaster therefore claimed 6 lives. Almost immediately, investigators faced several separate questions. What was the intended dive plan? Did the group intend to enter the cave? What maximum depth had been discussed? What breathing gas were they carrying? Were they equipped for decompression and cave penetration? Did the vessel have the proper authorization to operate diving excursions? Did anyone on the surface know where the 5 divers intended to go? And did the scientific research permit have any connection to the fatal dive? Maldivian officials said the government had authorized research involving soft corals. However, officials also said they had not been informed that the group intended to undertake a deep cave dive. 2 members of the fatal group were reportedly not listed among the authorized research participants. The University of Genoa later stated that the fatal dive was not part of the university mission's planned research activities and had been undertaken privately. The operator of the Duke of York said the vessel had permission for recreational diving to a maximum of 30 meters. But the cave entrance was reported to be approximately 55 meters deep, and Benedetti's body was recovered from around 60 meters. Those facts created an obvious legal question. Was this a recreational dive that went catastrophically beyond its authorized limit? Or was it a planned technical cave dive conducted without the permits, equipment, and operational structure normally required for that activity? That is one of the issues Maldivian authorities must investigate. The event took place in Maldivian waters. The vessel was operating in the Maldives. The local diving regulations, licensing system, and emergency response all fell under Maldivian authority. That gives the Maldives the clearest territorial jurisdiction over the incident. In simple terms, the country where an event happens usually has the first responsibility for investigating it. Maldivian investigators can examine the vessel. They can question the operator and crew. They can review local permits. They can determine whether tourism and diving regulations were violated. They can inspect evidence recovered from the cave. They can also determine whether any person or company operating within the Maldives committed a local criminal or regulatory offense. But the Maldives is not the only country with a legitimate interest. All 5 cave diving victims were Italian citizens. Italy therefore opened its own investigation. Rome prosecutors began examining the possibility of culpable homicide, the Italian legal category often compared with manslaughter or causing death through negligence. Opening that investigation does not mean prosecutors have already identified a guilty person. It does not prove that a crime occurred. It allows prosecutors to preserve evidence, question witnesses, and determine whether negligence or unlawful conduct contributed to the deaths. Italian investigators began seizing electronic devices that had been returned with the victims' possessions. Reports indicate that phones, computers, tablets, USB drives, and a hard drive were taken for examination. Those devices could reveal communications before the dive. Messages may show how the excursion was planned. Photographs might reveal equipment configurations. Emails or chat records could establish who organized the dive, what depth was discussed, and whether anyone raised concerns. But those personal devices may not show what happened after the divers entered the water. For that, investigators need the equipment recovered from the cave. Dive computers can preserve a digital profile of the dive. Depending on the model and settings, a computer may show depth changes, elapsed time, ascent speed, decompression obligations, and warning alarms. It might show whether the divers descended directly towards 60 meters. It might reveal whether they remained near one depth or moved deeper inside the cave. It could show whether any diver began an ascent before returning downward. It may even indicate whether a diver changed breathing gases, assuming the computer was configured to record that information. Then there are the cameras. The recovery team reportedly recovered underwater video cameras, including a GoPro regarded by investigators as especially important. A camera could reveal visibility inside the cave. It could show the group's formation. It might record their lights, equipment, hand signals, and direction of travel. It could establish whether a guideline was being used. It might reveal when the divers entered the wrong passage, and it could show whether the group appeared calm, confused, or already in distress. However, the public should not assume that the camera definitely captured the entire emergency. The battery may have died. The recording may have been stopped. The lens may have been blocked by silt. The file could be corrupted. The camera may have been attached to a diver whose view did not show the rest of the team. Investigators will not know its full value until it is professionally examined. That leads to the central legal problem. The cameras and dive equipment were recovered in the Maldives and placed into Maldivian custody. Italian police cannot simply arrive in Malé, collect the devices, and fly home. Italy has no automatic power to seize evidence inside another sovereign country. Instead, Italian prosecutors sent what is known as an international rogatory request. The phrase sounds complicated. The basic idea is not. Imagine that a detective in Arizona needs evidence being held by police in another country. The detective cannot serve an ordinary local warrant there. The detective must ask the foreign country's legal authorities to assist. The request identifies the investigation. It describes the evidence being sought. It explains why that evidence is relevant. It may ask the other country to seize, examine, copy, authenticate, or transfer the material. The receiving country then reviews the request under its own law. That process is often called a letter rogatory, international rogatory, or formal request for judicial assistance. It is essentially one legal system asking another legal system. Please perform this investigative act for us, because we do not have authority to perform it inside your country. This process protects sovereignty. It prevents foreign police forces from operating wherever they choose. It also helps protect defendants by ensuring that evidence is obtained through lawful procedures. But it can be painfully slow. The request may need to pass through prosecutors, justice ministries, foreign ministries, courts, or diplomatic channels. It may require translation. Officials may ask for additional details. A judge may need to approve the seizure or transfer. The Maldives may decide that its investigators must examine the original devices before releasing them. It may provide forensic copies rather than the physical objects. It may require assurances that the evidence will be returned. And every step must be documented. This is why international evidence transfers can move more slowly than the public expects. Downloading a dive computer might take minutes. Obtaining the legal authority to download that computer, verify the data, preserve the original, and make the results admissible in 2 countries can take weeks or months. Investigators must also protect the chain of custody. Chain of custody means the documented history of an item of evidence. Who recovered the GoPro? Where was it stored? Who opened it? Was the memory card removed? Was the device switched on? Who created the forensic copy? Was the original data altered during the process? Who transported it? Who had access to it? Those details may sound bureaucratic, but they matter. Suppose investigators find a crucial video showing an argument about the dive plan. A future defense attorney might ask whether the file was edited. Suppose a dive computer shows a maximum depth of 61 meters. A lawyer might ask whether the device belonged to the person investigators claim it belonged to. Suppose metadata shows that a recording began earlier than expected. A court may need proof that the camera's internal clock was accurate. Without a clean chain of custody, powerful evidence can be challenged. The more countries involved, the more complicated that chain becomes. A device recovered by a Finnish technical diver in a Maldivian cave may be handed to Maldivian police, examined by a local technician, copied for prosecutors, transferred through judicial channels, and then analyzed by Italian specialists. Every transfer must be recorded. Every forensic action must be repeatable. Every copy must be verified against the original. This creates a frustrating contrast. The physical disaster may have unfolded in minutes. The legal reconstruction may take months or longer. Underwater, the divers faced a possible chain of errors. A depth beyond recreational limits. An overhead cave environment. Limited breathing gas. Potential disorientation. A possible wrong turn. Silt and reduced visibility, increasing decompression obligations. No direct ascent to the surface. Each mistake could magnify the next. Now investigators face a chain of law. One country recovered the evidence. Another country lost 5 citizens. One authority is examining local permits and vessel operations. Another is investigating possible criminal negligence. One legal system may need the physical devices. The other may need to preserve them for its own case. A request must be written. The request must be accepted. A court may need to authorize action. Forensic copies must be created. The evidence must be authenticated. Witness statements must be translated. Experts must compare computer data, camera footage, autopsy results, gas analysis, and recovery team observations. The dive may have been a chain of fast-moving errors. The investigation is a chain of slow-moving legal requirements. That does not necessarily mean anyone is deliberately blocking the truth. There is currently no confirmed public evidence that a judge has ordered a completed final report to be hidden. There is also no confirmed evidence that the Maldives has permanently refused Italy's request. What we can say is that the Italian investigation depends heavily on evidence located in another jurisdiction. Until prosecutors receive that material, or verified forensic copies, their reconstruction may remain incomplete. The Maldivian investigation also has broader issues to consider. Authorities must examine the Duke of York's operating permissions. The government said the vessel lacked the dive school permit required to take customers on diving expeditions, while the operator said it possessed permission for recreational diving to 30 meters. Investigators must determine exactly what authorization existed and what activities it covered. They must examine whether the dive was organized through the vessel, independently by the group, or through some combination of both. They must determine what Benedetti, the dive instructor and director, knew about the plan. They must determine whether the crew expected the group to enter the cave. They must identify what safety equipment was available on the vessel. They must examine the emergency response after the group failed to surface. They must also investigate the death of Mohammed Mahoudi during the first recovery attempt. That second death raises its own questions concerning rescue planning, decompression management, equipment, and the decision to send personnel into an extremely hazardous environment. These are not simple questions, and the most important witnesses cannot testify. All 5 members of the dive team died. Benedetti, who may have known more about the operational plan than anyone else, died near the cave entrance. That leaves investigators dependent on indirect evidence. Messages, briefings, permit applications, equipment, digital records, recovery observations, autopsy and toxicology results, statements from people aboard the vessel, and the testimony of the 6th diver who reportedly chose not to enter the water. The investigation may eventually determine what happened, but establishing why it happened and who, if anyone, bears criminal responsibility is much harder. A technical explanation is not automatically a legal explanation. Suppose the divers entered the wrong tunnel. That may explain where they died. It does not automatically explain why the dive was permitted to begin. Suppose they ran out of gas. That may explain the immediate cause of death. It does not establish who calculated the gas plan. Suppose nitrogen narcosis impaired their judgment. That may explain confusion. It does not prove that another person committed a crime. Suppose the GoPro shows the group knowingly entering the cave. That could affect the investigation, but it would not necessarily remove responsibility from an operator who organized or supported an unauthorized dive. Criminal cases require more than showing that a dangerous event occurred. Prosecutors normally must connect a person's action or failure to act with a legal duty, a breach of that duty, and the resulting deaths. That is why investigators need the complete record. The public may want one dramatic answer. The dive was illegal. The current pushed them down. The guide made a mistake. The divers ignored the rules. They followed a false exit. They ran out of gas. But a courtroom requires something more precise. Who had responsibility? What did that person know? What should that person reasonably have done? What specific rule was violated? And did that violation contribute directly to the deaths? Until those questions are answered, the legal picture remains unresolved. There is also the question of whether the GoPro footage should eventually be released publicly. Some people believe the footage belongs in the public record. They argue that releasing it could educate divers, expose unsafe practices, and prevent another tragedy. Others believe the video should remain private. It may contain the final moments of 5 people. Their families may not want those images circulating online. Premature release could also distort witness testimony, contaminate a jury pool, or compromise the criminal investigation. The strongest approach may be a detailed official reconstruction rather than unrestricted publication of the raw footage. Investigators could describe the relevant actions. Experts could explain the equipment and dive profile. A final report could include still images, diagrams, and timelines without broadcasting the victims' deaths. But that decision belongs first to the investigating authorities, courts, and families, not to social media. For now, the case remains divided between 2 nations. The Maldives controls the scene, the local records, and much of the recovered equipment. Italy represents the country of the 5 victims and is investigating whether negligence contributed to their deaths. Both countries want answers, but each must operate through its own legal system, and that means the search for truth moves at the speed of international law. The dive computers may already contain the profile. The cameras may already contain the images. The GoPro may already contain the moment everything changed. But evidence does not become a legal conclusion simply because it exists. It must be lawfully transferred, professionally examined, authenticated, compared with every other piece of evidence, and tested against the rules of 2 different countries. The diver's final journey into the cave may have lasted only minutes. The legal journey toward a final answer could take far longer. So here is the question. Should the recovered GoPro footage eventually be released to the public in the interest of transparency and diver education? Or should it remain strictly inside the investigation, protected for the courts and the victims' families? Tell me what you think in the comments. And until a complete official report is released, remember the most important distinction in this case. Evidence is emerging. Theories are multiplying. But the final legal conclusions have not yet been established.